The third episode of Ahsoka premiered this week on D+. The first two episodes were not that good, in my opinion. Do you think this third one will succeed in changing my opinion? Nope, sure didn't. As we did the week before, myself, Wookie Be Bad, and the Fractured Filter took time on Wednesday night to do our own live watch.
No. Welcome to Ray Skywalker, bitches.
I encourage you to go watch that episode on Wookie Be Bad's channel. It's only about 2 hours this time compared to the 3.5 hours we put in on the first two episodes, which clocked in at almost an hour and a half. This one, thankfully, is a lot less time. In fact, based upon the time codes for this one, including the opening stinger and the end credits, we literally have about 30 minutes. So thankfully, that was quicker. And unfortunately, there's not a lot that I really liked in this episode. And really, this whole thing broke down to three general scenes. We have a training montage. We got Hera speaking with members of the New Republic Council, including Chancellor Mon Mothma. And then we have the end battle sequence, starship chase scene, which defies logic in several ways. So, like I said, that's about it for this episode. And there wasn't a lot that was really enjoyable for me. But I do want to, I mean, obviously, like I say, you can go back and check our initial reactions on that other video. But there are some things I do want to point out on this episode itself. First off, let's talk about the opening training sequence. Now, we all know George Lucas was influenced by, many different subjects and sources in creating Star Wars. He relied a good bit upon, the writings of Joseph Campbell regarding the hero's journey and looking to other classic films and movies, along with, the idea of like the Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon serials in the late 30s, along with, as noted, Kurosawa and the Hidden Fortress. But for some reason, this whole training sequence relies a great deal on Asian themes. I'm not certain if there's some commentary on the fact that the actress who's playing Sabine is in fact Asian herself or what it is. But if you look at the scene where David Tennant Bot is training her in saber technique, the language sounds have Asian origin of some sort. At least it does to me. She's using what appears to be a wooden katana to use as a training stick. That's a little bit of a callback to how she was first being trained by an actual Jedi Knight, Kanan Jarrus. We then, of course, get this classic scene where Sabine is given a helmet with the blast shield down and told to defend herself. And yeah, we know it's member berry time.
You're joking. I can't see. How am I supposed to fight?
The line is virtually the same as it is in Star Wars.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
And training via blind fighting is nothing new in cinematic or television history. Go back and find some episodes of Buffy. I remember there's even a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie that does it as well. History is replete with this type of scene. And it's overly long, and the whole thing is basically Sabine is frustrated that she's not able to fight properly, which is actually very strange as well, because Sabine is a trained Mandalorian warrior. I guess we are to presume that despite being a Mandalorian and following the traditions of Mandalorians, even if not as strict as Din Djarin and his ilk, they still have a certain fighting ethic. They have certain fighting code, and Sabine was never shown to be one to shy away from that. She was always very skilled in combat. She was skilled in starship combat. So for her to suddenly lack the ability or forget how to fight is very strange. We then get the scene where Hera meets with the representatives of the New Republic. She's requesting a task force in order to go after Grand Admiral Thrawn, who she believes is returning. Some of the members of the council, of course, are reluctant to do so, believing that this is a fool's errand. In fact, one even questions whether or not this is just her attempt to try to find her friend Ezra Bridger.
Isn't this just another attempt to gain New Republic resources to aid in what has ultimately been your personal quest to find Ezra Bridger?
Hera gives a pithy, quick-witted comment back, asking where the senator was during the war.
Were you ever in the war, Senator?
No.
Just sat back and waited to see who came out on top?
Mon Mothma clearly respects Hera and asks that they be given a chance to speak about Hera's proposal. And the weird thing about this is Hera leaves the room. She's literally talking to a bunch of holograms who aren't there on the starship where she's at. So why does she have to leave the room? Why don't they just pop off screen? I don't know. But this does give us a chance to meet Jason Sandulo. Yes, Jason Sandulo actually exists in this universe. We knew he did. We were wondering if we were ever going to see him. He does not quite look quite the same as we saw him in the animated series. Of course, the differences in animation are obvious and understandable, but the hair color, honestly, I feel like they could have gone a little more green, at least closer to what he was portrayed in the animated series. But the big takeaway from in this scene for me is when Jason says, Chopper told me that Aunt Sabine is going to become a Jedi. And he says, I want to be a Jedi.
I want to be a Jedi.
Yeah, I know you do, Jason.
Now, what he should have said is, I want to be a Jedi, like my father. But again, we are ignoring we're ignoring entirely the existence of Kanan Jarrus. Kanan Jarrus, lover of Hera Syndulla, the one who trained Sabine Wren to use the Darksaber, the one who trained Ezra Bridger to be a Jedi. We're just ignoring him entirely for some reason. Let's really try to figure that one out. Ultimately, Hera does not get the task force she requested, and she informs Sabine and Ahsoka of this, and surprisingly does not say, I'm going to do something about it on my own. It's not like she's, not a general who certainly has access to her own ship, the Ghost, who maybe has some of her old crew still around. I mean, we have seen Zeb is in this universe, right? Sure we have. We saw him on The Mandalorian. She could gather up Rex, maybe a few other allies, hop on the Ghost, and go off and join. Maybe she will at some point, but it's strange that she just sort of gets cowtailed into, shrinking back and saying, you guys are on your own. Good luck. We then have the scene where Ahsoka and Sabine talk about her training and how difficult it is and how she's being frustrated that she's not succeeding more. The real important thing for me in this is that she is not Force sensitive. Now, we've seen a lot of commentary recently about the Force and what it is. And, I started looking into it myself. And of course, we find this quote from George Lucas going back to before Return of the Jedi was made. And it's from a production meeting where, he's asked about the Force. And he says, well, everyone is able to use the Force. Now, I've actually seen a couple videos that does provide a better explanation, and I think it's logical the way it's presented. Yes, we know that the Force is everywhere. We know that the Force is what creates life. That is the world that George Lucas established. But at the same time, after that quote, before Jedi was created, George Lucas came up with midichlorians.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
And it's been established that midichlorians are how people are able to access the Force. So people with a higher quantity of midichlorians are able to access the Force, which means those people who are low in midichlorian count, which clearly Sabine is, as Hu Yang indicated himself in the last episode.
I have known many Padawans over the centuries, and I can safely say your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all.
We do see sometimes that people are Force sensitive. For instance, I believe it's Chirrut in Rogue One, who is a guardian of the Wills. And it is very clear that he's Force sensitive. He's a blind person, but he clearly has the ability to have some force sense. Now, it's important to point out this does not mean that they are Jedi. They do not have Jedi powers. So while someone may be force sensitive, it can be very low force sensitive. I think this is consistent with George's vision. Now, Dave Filoni goes on and adds some to it.
Everybody is force intuitive. Han is. He just doesn't realize it. He calls it luck.
This I disagree with, because this takes away the whole idea that sometimes people just have skills on their own. By saying that Han Solo is able to unconsciously tap into the Force takes away from Han Solo's own uniqueness and skill as a person. He may not have access to the Force. He may not be Force sensitive, but he can still do things. To make everything, all skill, knowledge, and ability to be dependent upon your level of midichlorians or sensitivity to the Force just seems ridiculous. I don't think that's what George intended. Me personally, I believe that George always intended that the Force was all around the Star Wars universe. It was a guiding power in creating life in the universe. And those with a high midichlorian count, those trained as Jedi or those highly Force sensitive who were able to learn how to communicate with the Force through the midichlorians, are those of exceptional skill. That's how it should be. So for Sabine not to have Force powers is consistent. Being trained as a Jedi, that still does not make sense. That still does make sense. So she tries hard as she may. She will not be able to move this cup with her mind. And that's fine. Maybe she could be trained to be a better fighter, to balance her emotions even better. But she is not a Jedi, and she should not be referred to as a Padawan. The last thing, of course, in this whole episode, which again, not a lot happens in this episode if you really break it down. Like I said, training montage, New Republic conference, and the last being the fight scene, the dog fight. The bad guys, Shin and Merrick, who may or may not be Ezra Bridger, their ships, their weapons suck. They're literally just hitting the ship, but doing no damage. It's like they're just tagging them with pellets, not laser blasts. Sabine is actually able to finally get the hang of shooting again. For some reason, she forgot how to shoot. And of course, once she gets one, she's very excited about it.
Woo! I got one!
Yep, that's another member berry. I'm surprised Ahsoka didn't go, don't get cocky. They eventually get taken out because turbo lasers start up. See, the hyperspace ring is armed with turbo lasers. And these aren't your normal turbo lasers. You see, they're not just shooting laser blasts. They're shooting anti-aircraft laser blasts. At least that's what it looks like. Because these blasts are like exploding in space, not in atmosphere, in space with some sort of smoke around them. I suppose this is for some sort of dramatic effect of flying through the smoke. I don't know, but it doesn't make any sense why this is happening in space. Why don't they just shoot the ship itself? The hyperspace ring where Morgan Elsbeth is eventually does get a good shot off and disables the Ahsoka ship. And it's almost left defenseless, except for the fact there is a non-Jedi on the ship. And yes, this is where things get ridiculous, in my opinion. I understand that there have been scenes of zero-G, activities, fighting, whatever in Star Wars, in Clone Wars and Rebels, that we know people have gone zero-G. But this whole sequence looks ridiculous. Ahsoka in her spacesuit, which looks silly, walking on the hull. Yeah, I hope there's a magnetic boots because it doesn't work otherwise. And then her ability to jump off and do what appears to be a somersault and then land on the ship where there's no gravity. This could make sense if we saw Ahsoka use the Force at the same time. If she reached out with a hand and then drew herself to the ship. I mean, we saw Leia do it Mary Poppins style, which was ridiculous. But this short burst, at least that would be understandable. It'd be an acceptable use of Force power. And in that limited, circumstance, it would work. But we don't even see that. So we just see her land. That does not make any sense at all. It defies the laws of physics.
I can't change the laws of physics.
And then, of course, despite being shot at with these pea shooter guns, she's able to take one out. Yeah, she takes out that ship. So lightsabers can take out Starcraft, but they can't kill a tiny 100-pound Mandalorian girl. This, for me, is a problem with this show. There's no consistency in what's being shown. It's like they're just writing these stories, these episodes, and not paying attention to what was done before. That detracts from the overall story. That detracts from believing any of this stuff. And again, it is a suspension of disbelief, but when the disbelief becomes unbelievable, it's not even fun anymore. So after Sabine fixes the ship and Ahsoka miraculously gets inside, sometimes things that look good in animation just do not look proper or right in real life form. They escape down to the surface of the planet, flying through the clouds, and again, we get another member berry. Yep, Purgles are back. We knew Purgles were going to show up. At the end, we do get to see one character I do like in this show, Balin Skull, played by the late Ray Stevenson, show up and tells his troops to go get Ahsoka and Sabine, who've landed somewhere on the planet. The planet being the one where we had Star Wars Stonehenge in the previous episodes. So again, yeah, another episode. This really is a filler episode. Not a lot happens. This could have probably been accomplished in half the time. Like I say, it is 30 minutes, but it's, wow, nothing happens. Nothing really advances the plot. They could have just said, training's not going well. Hera doesn't get a fleet. You're on your own. Let's hyperspace jump to the planet and get us there. This is just filler content, but I guess, that's what Dave Filoni's good at.
I know.
Maybe next week they'll get a better constructed episode. Maybe they'll try real hard.
You win this round.
Next week, again, we'll be doing our live watch on Wednesdays. So join us there on Wookie Be Bad's channel as Wookie, Fractured, and I enjoy our struggle session together. Until next time, questions, comments, witticisms down below. Click the like button. Click the subscribe button. I'll see you all later.